First, some background on grounded theory research. Grounded theory was developed by Barney G. Glesser and the late Anselm L. Strauss in the late 1960s. Grounded theory came from the position that the current theory in sociology overly stressed verifying and testing theories rather than discovering the concepts or variables and hypotheses based on actual field data from participants. It was a little backwards from the traditional experimentation of research, where instead of starting with a hypothesis and working towards a theory, the theory and hypothesis are grounded in the data itself. In its simplest form, grounded theory is a theory of a process that explains an action or interaction about a topic.
Grounded theory researchers resist the temptation to see around blind corners, or if they have made guesses, they toss out any conclusions they've jumped to if later research proves them wrong or moves the research in another direction. By putting their guesses, ideas, comparisons, and opinions into memos, documents meant to be incubators for theories undergoing construction, the temptation to use a cookie cutter to mold real research into desirable conclusions can be avoided. We'll tell you more about memos later.
The systematic procedure is recommended for the beginning researcher, as the process follows phases throughout the research itself. This procedure is used widely, especially in educational research. Emphasis is placed on the use of data analysis steps of open, axial, and selective coding and the development of a logic paradigm or a visual picture of the theory generated. For an example of systematic procedure in grounded theory, please refer to Mary Ann Mace and Tony Ward's Modeling the Creative Process, a grounded theory analysis of creativity in the domain of art making. This study will also serve as one of your 2 activities following the presentation.
Some researchers, including Barney Glasser, feel that the systematic design of grounded theory is too bound by rules and categories put in place before the research even begins. These critics fear that true deserving theories will never come to light because researchers will be too busy massaging data to fit what they had hoped to find. Let the theory emerge from the data is their cry. Emerging design is their grounded theory approach and their answer to this problem. Analyzing the data and distilling the findings into a theory should be hard work, but applying the theory should be easy and it should fit like a glove. There are 4 central and uncompromising criteria of the theory undergoing development: fit, work, relevance, and modifiability. Like emerging design, the constructivist approach to grounded theory research rebels against preconceived categories, visual diagrams, and anything that distracts us from the real story. It is honest in mentioning the values of the researcher. In this way, the researcher's feelings are less likely to sneak in and influence the categories and codes that are eventually chosen. The constructivist researcher is always pondering, what does this all mean for our participants? What do their stories tell us about their experiences and how they feel? In fact, a study which used the constructivist approach to grounded theory research might even end with a question. You might want to ask yourself, are you willing to commit to a set of pre-chosen analytic categories? Sometimes this is best for beginning researchers. Are you willing to work with the jargon of the grounded theory field and to make sure to define terms such as open and axial coding and constant comparative data analysis for the readers of your research? Here's an example. In Legitimizing the Legitimate, a grounded theory study of legitimacy work among ethics and compliance officers, Trevino, Neuenberger, Kreiner, and Bishop chose a grounded theory design because it's Qualitative methods allow for a more detailed exploratory accounts of how individuals perceive and cope with the challenges they face. That's a quote from page 188. So, in a nutshell, when reviewing the existing literature, they found no studies which truly explored the challenge of simultaneously doing the work that an ethics and compliance officer does and justifying their work inside an organization in which employees do not value their work. So, grounded theory design was clearly the best approach for this study.
As an example, the study referred to earlier by Mary Ann Mace and Tony Ward, Modeling the Creative Process, a grounded theory analysis of creativity in the domain of art making. The title shows a use of Garan words such as modeling and art making. The 6 characteristics of grounded theory design outlined in this slide will be explored in depth in the following slides. As mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the theory is generated and developed from a process of actions and interactions among people and events pertaining to a topic. This is also known as part of the process approach. In a process approach, categories of basic information are identified in the data by the researcher and used to understand a process. Vivio codes are labels for these categories or themes that are phrased in the exact words of participants rather than in the words of the researcher or in a social science or educational terms. This allows for the voice of the participants to be part of the research itself instead of being laden with jargon. An example, rather than use the social science concept upward mobility, a participant might call this idea going up the ladder.
What is a saturated category, you might ask? Well, when a researcher decides that so much data about a particular category has been collected that new information would not yield any additional insight, that category is saturated.
Constant comparison is an inductive data analysis procedure in grounded theory research of generating and connecting categories by comparing incidents in the data to other incidents, incidents to categories, and categories to other categories.
Here's an example. In The Challenges of Being a Rural Gay Man, Coping with Stigma, Preston and Diageli asked a demographically diverse group of male participants from rural areas to tell their stories. They then went through the process of constant comparative data analysis and eventually found that stigma was the core category that all the other themes could relate to.
The entire process up to this point leads to generating a theory based on data collected by the researcher. The state of the research process is where discussion and conclusions happen, although because of the close proximity of the theory to the data, it is considered a middle range theory instead of a grand theory, such as human motivation. When presenting the theory, there are 3 breakdowns in information. Starting with visual coding, the research then creates theory propositions or hypotheses, and finally a narrative form. This narrative form develops a sense of what the research is all about through a descriptive story of the process. Memos allow the researcher to interject their own thoughts, feelings, and hunches about their research into the process itself. It can be a form of free writing that allows the researcher to connect categories, ideas, and thoughts. The memos can be short or long, more detailed and related to codes and categories, or broader and more abstract. When using grounded research design, it's important for the researcher to understand the role they play in that research. This can raise ethical questions when it comes to the participants itself. As with other qualitative methods, it's important to be emphatic and objective when it comes to giving the appropriate voice to participants and recognizing the authority and power the researcher has over those being interviewed. The following two slides help you to understand and identify the steps of grounded theory research from a systematic approach. These 8 steps are the building blocks of the grounded theory research plan and play a part in organization, allowing for a planned route for the research. Referring back to these steps helps maintain the course of research. Evaluating grounded theory research centers around key elements and quality criteria. Developing the elements and criteria, Charmés uses terms such as credibility, originality, resonance, and usefulness. Corbin and Strauss discuss factors such as how individuals can benefit from the research, the importance of concepts or categories, and their discussion within a context, the logic, depth, and variation, and the creative, innovative manner in which the researcher says something new. For a more in-depth understanding of this criteria, please review page 446 of your text.